MAGA dominance is spreading, but is there a danger of overreach? Let's find out in this week's edition of Whole Hog Politics. I'm Bill Sammon, joined as usual by my old pal Chris Stirewalt. We both work at The Hill and News Nation, but only you, Chris, are the author of Whole Hog Politics, published every Friday at thehill.com. And here's the really good news. Anyone can receive this incredible political newsletter by simply scanning the QR code on the screen right now. Chris, let's talk about overreach. We saw it during President Biden's one and only term, when Democrats perhaps went too far with open borders, student loan forgiveness, and even embracing an overly woke vocabulary. By the time they tried to correct course and pull back on some of their excesses, it was too little, too late, and they ended up, of course, losing to Donald Trump. But you argue that all of that Democratic overreach now seems like child's play when compared to the absolute dominance of Trump and his current impact on policy, politics, and culture. What do you mean by that? And are Republicans setting themselves up for a fall?
So the normal life cycle in American politics, let's say since 1936, is, well, I guess you can't say 36 because it wasn't a first term, but let's say since Dwight Eisenhower, first term president comes in, gets elected, new to the office. There is high approval. People like what they're doing. And then the excess comes in, and in midterms, there's a correction, right? So this is the cycle has intensified, certainly in the late 20th century and throughout the 21st century. If we go to Reagan, you have the 82 backlash and the correction, and then 84. Everybody would like to be Ronald Reagan. Every president would like to be Ronald Reagan, right? You have a bold agenda. You come in, you put it in place. Voters punish you for it. But by your team moderating and effective results being delivered, you go on to this smashing success and you're reelect. We saw that very much play out for Bill Clinton. We saw it play out for Barack Obama. We didn't see it for George W. Bush because of 9/11. But this is history's norm. You come in, you misinterpret your mandate, you go big, voters punish you, and then you come back and say, what I really meant to say, what we were really talking about was this, and we really actually wanted to balance the budget, and we really wanted to actually do X, Y, Z. In the Biden presidency, for a number of reasons, it didn't work that way. So Joe Biden was very clearly elected to not be Donald Trump. That was Joe Biden's mandate in 2020 was, this is out of control. The COVID, the administration's response to COVID. I'm count me among the number who says that Donald Trump probably would have been reelected if it wasn't for COVID. His negatives were high, but his COVID, but also his handling of COVID, probably is a more specific way to say it. If they'd have let old Mike Pence go out there and be the steady hand on the tiller, who knows what might have happened. But
he couldn't bear to have Pence out there in the briefing room at that podium and him sitting back in the Oval. He had to be the guy. And then we got into the bleach
and the light and
that,
the stuff. So, but Trump had the cycle, right? They came in, it was too much. Charlottesville, whatever goes into it. It was too much. And Republicans took the worst midterm loss that they had in a long time, right? You had to go back 40 years to get to a Democratic midterm gain like that. And there was some moderation and some correction. Joe Biden gets elected to not be Donald Trump. We want moderation, and Biden sent every signal that he could. I want to be moderate. I'm going to have Republicans. We're going to be cool. We're going to be cool. But then Joe Biden, arrogance it takes a lot of ego to run for president. You've written books about this. You've interviewed every president in your career. And it takes a lot. You got to have a lot of chutzpah to run for president. But unfortunately, once you're in, that can become destructive. And it became destructive for Joe Biden because he misunderstood his mandate and they just did too much. It was just too much. And because of Donald Trump, they didn't get the price signal from the political market in the midterm. if the Democrats, another theory that I don't know, I can't prove, but I believe if Democrats had gotten the whooping that they deserved in 2022, I don't know that Joe Biden would have run, right? I think if they would have taken a beating in 2022 like they should have, and the Republicans had a big majority in the House and Senate, and it looked like a repudiation of Biden, I think the pressure on Biden to get out would have been intense and people would have challenged him. But go ahead.
In other words, they would have corrected course, which we have seen through other cycles. So let me see if I understand this. So Biden gets elected. And by the way, we could talk about overreach. We could talk about hubris. We could talk about, I'm bigger than I think I'm bigger than I really am, and so I'm going to put all these big overreaching policies into place. But in Biden's case, there was also the issue of a couple of things. One, let's face it, the cognitive decline was a real issue throughout his one term. Secondly, it's been well documented that he kind of allowed himself, who had been considered sort of a moderate, to be co-opted by the liberal wing of his own party. So right out of the gate, he's doing more liberal stuff than you would have expected out of Joe Biden. But as you point out so well in your column this week, what normally happens when you do those overreaches is you get slapped in the midterms, and that gives you enough time to say, oh boy, we've got 2 years to get our act back together and moderate, whether it's, the open borders. And I think basically Biden had really gone too far with the immigration policies. We talk about the vocabulary and all the crazy woke terms and everything like that, which were really alienating a lot of swing voters, even though the very online, young, engaged Democratic voters were driving that train. So they didn't get that slap for a couple of reasons, one of which was really Donald Trump, who scrambles so many of these historic norms. But for whatever reason, Democrats didn't get as much of a reality check in their midterms, and therefore they continued with their excesses. And it wasn't until really 2024, I mean, the year of the election, where they started to, they started to actually, well, we're actually changing our policy on immigration. We're actually changing our policy on fossil fuels. We're actually changing our policy on student debt forgiveness. And it was too late. But the ultimate thing would have been, the ultimate thing was, we're actually changing our candidate.
We're going to dump this guy.
And that wasn't even good enough. It was too late.
Right, because if the premise I think that both parties struggle with, because they get high on their own supply and they're hanging out with each other, right? One of the reasons, if I can just say, that I think The Hill is important, I think News Nation's important, I think that the project is important, is it's really essential for Americans to hear validly, normally presented views from people they disagree with. But if you live in a bubble, and this is, I talked about David Shor, the Democratic strategist, who as early as 2021 was telling Democrats, you are in a bubble. You are listening to young, very online, very woke, very left, socialistic staffers who are telling you more, 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 and you're not connecting with the persuadable voters. Because remember, the persuadable voters are persuadable because they're not as partisan. I know it sounds tautological, but it's true. And the people so you've got let's say it's a 30, 30, and 30, I'll get it wrong, 39. I don't know. Pardon my math. Let's call it 30, 30, 40.
You're talking about 30 Democrats, 30 or 30 liberal, 30 conservative, and 40 persuadable.
30% will vote for, you remember people used to talk about yellow dog Democrats. They called them yellow dog Democrats because they'd vote for a yellow dog if it was on the ticket as a Democrat. They vote Democratic. They don't care. They're going to vote. They would never, ever, ever vote for Republican. And then as
opposed to blue dog Democrats.
Right, who said and the joke was, you're strangling us with your liberal policies and we're turning blue. The Republicans on the other side, which is now you'd basically call MAGA, right? But these are the people who are the most intense, the most fired up, and they're giving their parties lots of feedback. They're engaged with their parties a lot, and they're telling them this matters to us, this matters to us. Now, there is the problem of our primary election system and how that incentivizes bad choices, but there's also just the feedback that if you live in a feedback loop with people who are radical and intense, you're going to tend to believe that everybody's radical and intense. So the Democrats in 2021, 22 falsely believed, they convinced themselves that there had been a paradigmatic shift in the country after January 6th and during the pandemic and because of Donald Trump, that everything this time is different. Everything is different and we've got to go big. And Joe Biden met with historians and they told him that, he's the, he will you, this is something we remember certainly from early Obama. Will you be FDR? No, you may be Lincoln. Great. I'm really into this story. I really like the story that you guys are telling me. And I'm going to not be a transitional president. I'm going to be a transformative president. And I'm going to make this new coalition and do all this stuff. Republicans should remember this Trump term has only been going on for 9 months. We're coming up on the 9-month anniversary. And what got me thinking about all of this was I noticed in the whole hog average that Donald Trump's approval rating ticked up. And I saw it ticked up, and I was like, "Oh, he's up." And I think it's
43%, according to your newsletter. The average
40 in the average, 43%, which is it's up, and it's up 2 points, I think, from last month.
2.1, I believe it was.
Yeah, so he's up from last month. He's up from last week, and I thought, okay, like maybe there's something happening. So then I went back and compared it to Biden, and I compared it to Trump in the first term, and he's below both. He's behind both himself and Joe Biden.
Really? He's behind himself at this point compared to his first term.
So
okay, I had assumed it was the reverse, but
it's close. It's statistically insignificant, right? It's not. It's not like he's 5 points. It's not. He wasn't popular at this point in his first term, but his drop off in the second term came faster, was deeper, and of course part of that is because he started at a higher point. He started actually for the first time in his presidential life
like
above water, right? He had majority approval when he started. The country was definitely giving him a chance. And if you look at the plot line over time, you can go to oh, you know where you can go? You can go to Decision Desk HQ, and you can look at our partners at DDHQ and look at the line, bloop, 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 bloop. And it's dropped quite quickly. And there was a new Fox News poll that came out this week that actually helped buoy his average. He came in at 46% approval in the Fox News poll, which is
and that's a good poll.
It's a very good poll, and it's the highest. So it's the poll most favorable to Trump. It gives him a 46.54 compared to his lowest number, which is Quinnipiac, which is 37.55. So this is quite a spread. This is the most favorable poll for Donald Trump. Then you look at his numbers on the economy, particularly, but also on crime, also on everything else, and you see the downward pressure. You see this downward pressure. And so as I started thinking about what's the deal, and I'm looking for, as a human being, monocausality, I'm like, okay, what explains this? And then
that's your first mistake.
Exactly. And then I realized, no, everything explains this. It's the too muchness. It's the too many things, everything, everywhere, all at once, or whatever the name of that movie that I didn't see is. But it's I just listed through like a number of things that for the 30% who are very MAGA-y, very Republican-y, almost all of them like almost all of it. Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, there are lots of Democrats and independents who like some of the things too. Right. If you could give the residents of Washington, D.C., sodium pentothal and make them tell the truth about how they feel about the police takeover in Washington, D.C.
Oh, yeah.
They would like it. Yeah. They would like it because it helped. Right. And crime did go down. Trump exaggerated and talked about he talked about it in a way that was not honest or helpful, but they know that the policy was beneficial to them, especially in a lot of these very difficult neighborhoods. So there are Democrats and independents who like individual things that Donald Trump is doing. But when you put it all together, well, I'll shut up by saying this. When I was a young reporter and I was covering a prosecuting attorney's race in West Virginia, they have elected prosecutors by county. And this guy had been prosecuting attorney since the earth cooled. He had been around forever, and he always won. And I said, well, you're in good shape. You should win handily this time. And he said, yeah, but you know what? One of these days, you're going to prosecute too many people's brother-in-laws and too many people's cousins, and you're going to keep doing your job, and you just run out of road. And that's a lesson that I've taken, which is sometimes it's just one thing, right? So we can look back on Barack Obama and we can say, Obamacare, cap and trade, like we can make the list, right? What are the things that burned Obama and burned Democrats in the midterm? Those are the top two. We can see that. There's a couple other things, but we can see what caused the backlash.
Yeah. But sometimes it's everything.
Sometimes it's just the too muchness. Everything. And I think in Biden's case, the unwillingness, particularly on inflation and immigration, it becomes clearer and clearer in hindsight that Democrats got high on their own supply, believed that they were in a moment where they were building this huge majority, and they did not take action on the issues that for that 40% of the country that is to some degree available, is some degree persuadable, that they just said, we're going to forget about you guys for a while and we're going to do what we want. And the spending is going to keep going, and that's going to drive the inflation up. And we're not going to do remain in Mexico. We're not going to put limits on these things. And the tide of illegal immigration or refugees is going to continue to put pressure on, by the way, our own voters, right? Democrats were doing it to their own voters, or Greg Abbott was helping Democrats do it to their own voters. And the fact that it was April of 2024 before Joe Biden said, we better fix.
Correct course.
We better fix.
Correct course.
I don't see Donald Trump, who is not allowed to run for another term. I don't see what that pressure point would be on Donald Trump at any point to say, okay, we're going to moderate.
Yeah, a forcing mechanism. Chris, let me read the following excerpt from your excellent column this week, because it gets right to this issue of, this time maybe we have a permanent majority. The temptation for Republicans is in the eternal self-deception that afflicts almost every party with a new majority. America doesn't do much in the way of permanent majorities these days, but it is alluring always to believe that, again, this time is different, and that the fragile coalition pieced together for the previous contest is now durable. It wasn't an election, they think. It was the start of a movement. And I've seen that. I remember people talking about that in the wake of 9/11, when George W. Bush's approval hit 90%, which is the highest recorded by any president in history. I've seen it with Democrats. I've seen it in Republicans. And I think some people are falling for it again now. We're not that kind of a country. It's going to bounce back and forth. It may go a couple cycles, but it's going to bounce back and forth, right?
We talked about it last week about the dead reckoning and the zigzagging, right? The way that our system is supposed to work is you get ahead of steam, you start going this way. One of the reasons that it was so bad that FDR ran for 4 times, right? That's insane that he 4 times violated that norm, and why that constitutional amendment was necessary is it's supposed to be iterative. It's supposed to be, you got it, then we got it, you got it, then we got it. When we started the process, we had Constitution Day this week. Happy belated Constitution Day. But when we started the process, Virginia was winning like all of the presidential elections. This was a problem because it was only Virginia. John Adams got in there, but nobody liked John Adams because John Adams was true to his own nature. But the Virginians were dominating the process. And that wasn't good, because what you want is for everybody to feel like they have a say in steering this ship. They have some part of it. And it's good that we don't do permanent majorities. It's good that we live in a country where politicians are more afraid of voters than voters are of politicians. That's how we want it, right? That's how it was supposed to be. We want the anxiety to be within the elected officials, not within the electorate. And we don't permanent majorities, coalitions change. You can plot the line from 1964 to 1980 and this massive systemic change that happened in American politics. Black voters became overwhelmingly Democratic. The South became overwhelmingly Republican. We can track these big movements over time and we can see coalitional changes. But think about it this way. Ronald Reagan, the most successful president of the second half of the 20th century by any estimation, comes in, gets pantsed in 82, takes a beating. Then he comes back in 84. His party comes back in 84 and he wins 49 states and almost beats Walter Mondale in his home state, only misses by 7,000 votes. This is the highest tide that you could have in America. This is the one in modern American politics. 84, that's it. Even better than Nixon 72.
Yeah.
Where was that coalition by 1990? Kaput. In many, it was by the time that George H.W. Bush is running for re-election, that coalition had already fragmented and Bill Clinton and the Democrats had found a way to do it. So I think the thing to remember, the Democratic Party is in a very pitiful condition right now. This is a very sad story.
Sad.
It's sad, but in a political marketplace, in a marketplace between these parties, in this duopoly, Republicans have to understand that Democrats will figure things out and they will take advantage of the weaknesses in the coalition. They will exploit it. And that's what we want, right? We want that competition for voters.
Staying with our theme of overreach and our discussion of midterms, I'm old enough to have covered the 2002 midterms when Senator Paul Wellstone, tragically, who's a very nice guy, arch liberal,
totally
hard left liberal. He'd be very comfortable in Mamdani's company, but super nice guy. He was tragically killed in a plane crash like 11 days or something before the midterm elections. And he was way up in the polls. Of course, this was in Minnesota.
Yep.
And at the last minute, they said, well, what are we going to do? The Democrats, they put in Walter Mondale.
Speaking of Walter Mondale.
Who had been, and he stepped up, came out of retirement, and there was a poll, I believe, that was released. They did a memorial service for Paul Wellstone a week before the election, and the morning of that memorial service, a poll came out that showed Mondale up by, I don't remember, it was like 6 or 7 points, but very comfortably up over his opponent, Norm Coleman, the Republican. And what happened was the memorial service, which was televised because it was a big story for Paul Wellstone to be killed in a plane crash, turned into an unseemly political rally. And it became such a big story and was so dominant of a story for the next week that you could literally track the poll numbers for Mondale going down and Coleman going up. And in the end, Coleman won by a couple points. So it ended up being a swing of like a 10-point swing. And analysts left, right, and center all agreed that it was that memorial service. And the reason I bring that up is because this weekend we have a memorial service for Charlie Kirk, who, of course, was tragically assassinated recently. You and I both had the pleasure of knowing him at least a little bit. And I wonder, Chris, on the topic of overreach, when I think back of that Wellstone rally, and it really turned into a rally, and people said, you can't do this. This is supposed to be a somber occasion. This is supposed to be a memorial service for someone who just tragically died. Now, I understand we're in different times now and different norms, and maybe 2002 looks kind of quaint by today's rules of the road, but still, don't you think there's a danger for Republicans to go too far this weekend, and then that creates a little bit of a backlash, or no?
J.D. Vance did campaign swing, midterm, a very midterm facing campaign swing this week, and in one of his stops where they were selling, I think, infrastructure. I don't know. It says selling the one big beautiful bill, selling the idea of the Republicans keeping the majority, and he brought Charlie Kirk into it in a way that suggested, right, like this is different. He hosted Charlie Kirk's podcast.
Yeah.
That everything is different, that this has changed everything. And again, if you're talking to the voters in Michigan who the Republicans need to come out and choose, um, why am I drawing a blank on his name? Sorry, Mike Rogers.
Yeah.
The voters who Mike Rogers needs, who live in Western Michigan, let's say the Gerald Ford style, Grand Rapids kinds of Republicans that Republicans have struggled with in the Trump era. These are very happy Romney voters, but they have been unhappy with the Republicans in the current era. Mike Rogers needs all of those folks to come out and vote for him and do so happily. Those are not people who have been activated and radicalized by the murder of Charlie Kirk. They're not. That's not who they are. And they're not living in the space at the edges where the people who hate Charlie Kirk and the people who are beatifying Charlie Kirk, those votes are already spoken for, right? Those votes are all already banked. Everybody who has a strong feeling about Charlie Kirk is you can bank their vote one way or the other. For Republicans at this rally, the idea of, I want to give credit to his organization, to his widow. I suspect that they, with a lot of experience of doing large events, and he has a mega church pastor who I'm sure is very familiar with doing these kinds of events. Maybe they keep it dignified. Maybe they keep it decent. Maybe it becomes a ennobling moment in MAGA. Maybe it does that. But, thirsty podcasters, when you put the incentive for, well, here's how I will shut up. I'm going to manage to shut up, and I'm going to manage to shut up by quoting my friend, the great Megan McArdle. Talks about the danger of social media mob. And there's the mob danger about cancel culture and all of that stuff. But there's this too. If you get 20,000 people to like or repost a tweet, it feels pretty cool, right? You're like, wow, 20,000 people. I can't believe it. That's pretty big. And as Megan will tell you, that's about as many people as attend a high school football game in Texas on a Friday night. So it feels like a lot of people.
Put it in context. It is minuscule.
It feels so big, and it feels real, and it feels intense, and you're in this feedback loop, and it's pushing you. But then when you remember that the normal voters, the millions of people who are like, I'm kind of a Republican, but I'm not crazy about this. I'm kind of a Democrat, but I'm not crazy about this. And that little sliver of true independence, when you talk to those people, they're not on social media talking about politics. They're not in that space. So it's that disconnect that Democrats suffered enormously for in Joe Biden's presidency that Republicans should be very conscious of now, that you can get high on your own supply and lose touch with the voters who gave you your initial majority.
Chris, I want to talk quickly about the latest excerpt from Kamala Harris's forthcoming book, where she said, she writes that her first choice for her running mate would have been Mayor Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary.
Too gay.
But she said he was gay.
Too gay.
And so the way she put it was, I don't think the country was ready for that, which is, I guess that's one way of putting it.
A bigoted nation.
She wasn't ready for it.
A bigoted nation, she determined, was not ready to vote for a black Indian
woman married to a Jewish man
with a gay running mate.
This is the way she put it, with a gay running mate. My question to you is this. That's not doing Mayor Pete any favors as he weighs his presidential chances, right? I mean, does he want this conversation?
Oh, yeah, I suppose he does, because then you can explain why you're bad at things by saying it's because I'm gay. It sort of feeds into the, like, I would be president already if it wasn't because I was gay. I guess it's an excuse, a comforting excuse that you might tell.
You mean, in other words, you're saying Mayor Pete can say he can say that the
bigotry of the American people
is what's holding me back.
The bigotry of the American people.
Okay, that's what you're saying.
The only. Okay, now let me tell you something. Pete Buttigieg is a gifted politician.
Oh, he's amazing.
He's
really amazing.
He is smart. he is nimble, he is quick, he is all of those things. But he also is a huge nerd. He is a giant nerd. Now, whether he was gay, whether he was straight, whether he was whatever,
It may be the nerdiness, really.
he's a
not the-
technocratic, and I say this as a dork, he's a technocratic dork. And
Yeah.
the idea that if only he was straight, if only Pete Buttigieg
Right.
was just on fire for women, just loved ladies. If that was true, then it would be okay. I think that
I'm not really buying that.
I think that what I read in that excerpt, and the reason I included it in the note, I think it said a lot about why that campaign failed. Now, I should credit Kamala Harris did a lot better than when you look at the shift in the swing states versus the non-swing states, where they put her and they put her effort and put their money. She held down the swing to only 6 points instead of the 11 points nationally. It was an effective campaign. It was time limited. I stipulate all of that. But I thought that concept of I am too barrier breaking, I am too much for the American people. And if
I'm ahead of my time.
ahead of my time.
They're not ready.
And
it's like Marty McFly in Back to the Future playing the song, and he says, "Your parents are going to love this. It's a little ahead of your time."
exactly. Here's how, let me put it this way. Pete Buttigieg would have been a better choice than Tim Walz. Tim Walz was a progressive's idea of a conservative, right? Tim Walz is like, you guys like this. He fixes trucks and stuff. He has a camo hat. He talks kind of plainly. You guys like this. This is what you like. We'll pander to you with this. And Walz, of course, turned out to not be very good. He turned out to not be good at running for vice president, and J.D. Vance ate his liver in that debate, right? Absolutely carved him up.
Yeah.
I think, gay or not gay, Pete Buttigieg would have made a better running mate for Kamala Harris than Tim Walz was. And I say that to point out Barack Obama, how many times did you hear Barack Obama talk about his race? Very seldom.
Very few.
Very,
compared to his memoirs where he talked in
exactly. So he writes these books talking about his struggle. Once he enters public life, he does not.
Yeah.
I mean, the most famous comment of Barack Obama about race was about Pennsylvania primary voters, in which he said that they get bitter and they cling to their guns and they cling to their religion. And what he was trying to say in a roundabout way to a bunch of dippy, crunchy California rich folks at a fundraiser was, look, give these folks a little credit. It's hard for them to embrace voting for a guy named Barack Hussein Obama, right? Be cool with these people. Don't be mad at them. They mean well, and Hillary Clinton is exploiting that, and we should be cool about it. But he didn't say that publicly. The one big speech he gave on race, he gave after the Hillary Clinton, and then the Republicans had put Reverend Jeremiah Wright so far up his nose that it was scratching the back of his brain, and Obama finally came out and gave this speech that didn't say anything, but did talk. He avoided the question, but did talk about race in sort of a full way. But he let other people talk about it. The virtue signaling kind of intersectional theory about race is so outdated, is so past in a country where 1 in 5 marriages are between races now, right? We are becoming a multi-ethnic blob, and that's good. The salience of race is dropping. And as far as gay people, the Secretary of the Treasury is gay, right?
Yeah.
He's a married gay man. And
well, there was a New York Times headline the other day about Trump's big gay administration or something like that, and it went through all of these extremely powerful gay, cabinet members and whatever that are doing unbelievable things for MAGA and implementing his policy. Chris, I'm afraid we're out of time. This has been great. My name again is Bill Sammon. Of course, I'm joined by Chris Stirewalt. We will see you next week on Whole Hog Politics.